The Albuquerque Rescue Mission works with people who are facing many challenges, including homelessness. It's one of many organizations in Albuquerque dealing with this issue. We invited some other local leaders to join us to discuss the broader effort to end homelessness in the city. Dennis Plummer is the CEO of Heading Home. John Ames is Community Housing Director with the Supportive Housing Coalition. And Jennifer Metzler is Executive Director of Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Right now, volunteers in Albuquerque are out counting people who are homeless. Dennis, what do you think that we'll see when the final numbers are tallied?
Well, obviously, we hope it's a much lower number. This data is so critical, and so the huge amount of volunteers coming together have made it possible. We've done 2 morning outreaches at 4 a.m. We're doing site visits to all of the shelters, the lunch lines as well. And at the end, what we really want is to have made visible those who are invisible so that we have names and we know their stories and we can really align our resources to the most critical.
But there are some limitations to doing a survey like this. Jennifer, what are some of the people who aren't counted or things that you can't see from a survey?
I think that's important to point out that we need these numbers. It helps us allocate resources and respond, but a partial count that doesn't capture everyone means that we come up with partial solutions, and we really want to end homelessness. So recognizing what it is and its value and what it isn't, that it doesn't include people who might be moving house to house couch surfing, young people around the university that might be in squats or buildings where they don't want us to find them, many people that we don't see who are doubled up in precarious housing that we just don't put our hands on in that one point in time. So I think recognizing the value of that and also how it limits us is really important.
Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless has been around for 20 years. What's different now in the folks that you're seeing who are experiencing homelessness versus when the organization first started?
I think it's pretty much the same. We still see a real diverse group of people with healthcare needs. I think what's different about how we approach the circumstances of homelessness as it relates to healthcare and working with others is that we've become, in the last 30 years, very institutionalized, which is the good news and the bad news. We didn't think in our movement that this model would be necessary because we thought we would end homelessness and people wouldn't need a separate healthcare system. They would be housed and that we could address them in a more mainstream way. I think if we're going to need to continue to do that until we end homelessness, which we believe we can do, we believe we create it, our choices as a community can end it, that we're going to do it really well in high quality care. So I think we've become a very high quality organization responding to needs that have been growing, and I think we do that really well and still try to end it, but it's sort of sad as well as it's something to celebrate. Something that we also have learned is, I think as communities we're getting better at keeping people alive. Homelessness will kill you. There's high risk of mortality and morbidity and lower life expectancy for people who experience it for long periods. So we have a lot of data now nationwide. But what we're learning across the country from studies out of Boston and elsewhere with more cumulative data is that not only are there acute conditions that result from or lead to homelessness, but really chronic conditions as well. So people live longer. They start to reflect more of the general population. So it just becomes more complex, multiple, acute, severe. It's very challenging. Medicaid is a good thing that's going to help us to address more of that.
Absolutely. John, Pastor Hill from the Albuquerque Rescue Mission mentioned that they are seeing at his organization more women and children now than in past years. That's shifting a bit for them. What changes have you seen in the years that you've worked on homelessness and the types of people who are experiencing this?
Well, I think we could say that the homeless individual may have become that individual who we think of as more mainstream. That's not the hobo on the street or somebody who looks rather dirty and even carrying the placard on the interstate corner. It really are people that are working to some extent. The children, many children are in school and are really bouncing around from place to place, very unstable, unsettled. It's very difficult to classify who homeless people are, but certainly the work that we're doing here in Albuquerque tells me that the population is broader even than the count that we're able to do this week, and that homeless people often try to disappear so that for safety reasons and of course for the reason of a stigma.
Yeah.
And also I think we've seen a decrease in 2 populations, veteran homelessness and chronic homelessness, but an increase in women and children or families. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but I think specifically the reason for the decrease is a nationwide as well as a local focus to reduce veteran and chronic homelessness. So it tells me and encourages me that if we put our efforts together, we can achieve that. Now we need to be very aware of families and women and children.
And organizations in Albuquerque are coming together and working together to bring a lot of services to these people. How's that working with Heading Home?
With Heading Home, we're a backbone organization to a much wider collaboration. It includes the Supportive Housing Coalition, Healthcare for the Homeless, St. Martin's. All of our agencies come together every 2 weeks, actually, to case manage the folks that we're housing together. We're prioritizing medically vulnerable, chronically homeless. And we've housed over 430, counting their family members. And to me, it's been an exciting time just to see us all come together and put our resources in a very targeted, focused way. It's based on Stanford University collective impact models, so we know the models work when we put our minds to it, and it's a great collaboration.
How do we define chronic homelessness? What does that mean?
You guys can help me out. I know it's more than 1 year or 3 to 4 instances within 2 years.
John?
It's actually 4 instances of homelessness in 3 years, and those episodes have to add up to 12 months. Or, of course, it can be 12 consecutive months. And the problem with chronic homelessness is that it does eliminate, I think, huge numbers of people that are homeless, who maybe have just lost a job, and of course people live from paycheck to paycheck today in most cases, and so we struggle with this, with the definition and how to do the work that we do without limiting ourselves just to this population that certainly need housing, but there's many others who need housing as well.
Go ahead.
You asked earlier what we hope to find this week. One thing that I personally am hoping to find is that the number in that small definition of chronic homeless, medically vulnerable, will be such that we're no longer counting how many we have housed, but how many we have left to house. I would love to see that number be dwindling so that then the resources open up widely to the whole community.
Right.
Can I just tag on to that? I think a little to John's point and to Dennis's, that it has been a great several years with a lot of political and community will and a group of service providers and advocates really willing to come together and say, okay, that wasn't working. And so what models are there out there across the country? What's trending? What are they learning? And how does that work in Albuquerque? And I think that the conversations around definitions and around best approaches and about philosophy and models are the hardest conversations to have. And so there is a huge value in the impact we can have if we are willing to come together and relearn all our old structures and systems and approaches. On the one hand, I think also at Healthcare for the Homeless, we're part of the Community Health Centers movement, and we are what they call a special population because we are focused on the circumstances of homelessness exclusively. Homelessness is a construct. It is an extreme version of poverty. It's no different. It's very exacerbated. It's sort of under the safety net when people have fallen all the way through. Sometimes someone is homeless for a day, not the next day, not the next week, and then homeless again. So it's an experience that people have. It's a circumstance they find themselves in. We distinguish it necessarily as a category and define it so that we pay attention to it. But really, it's sort of a necessary special. We're special, but not that special. We're necessarily categorical. If we could think, and we're learning to do this through these alignments, to think of the community and the well-being of what does everyone need? Healthcare, support, housing. If we can look at that and really have that's not hard. It's hard to get our heads around. So if we can learn how to do that and become more sophisticated in how we work together, talk to one another, and transcend those divisions. And the quick fixes, I think we can have an impact. And that's what we've seen in this community. And there's there are measures that's really demonstrated now locally that those models can work.
We talk a lot about poverty in New Mexico. It sounds like you're kind of saying that we should think about poverty and homelessness and all, even if someone's not homeless yet, think of them as the same thing and the same needs in the community.
Yeah. So when we talk about these great successes we've had housing people, we can measure at their house. We're helping them to stay housed through a Housing First model, which John can definitely talk about. There's still people that are experiencing homelessness for whatever reason. They're veterans coming home. There's the recession. It's always about the economy. Homelessness is first and foremost about not having resources, living in poverty, and not having a roof or a safe place to sleep tonight or tomorrow night. That's the broadest, easiest way to describe it. And so, yeah, if we can look at that and think ahead and get into where intervention becomes prevention.
Well, and what's interesting is we know from the studies locally that it's 30% more expensive to pay for someone to be on the street, going through the ER, going through the emergency system. So to your point, it would be so much better if we can focus on managing and helping people maintain housing rather than managing homelessness.
And John, your program does this. You have a voucher program that you use where you work with landlords to get people into housing and try to make sure that they stay there a year later or even beyond. When someone is matched up with a landlord, what happens next?
Well, first of all, the person comes to us through a number of agencies like Heading Home, Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless. And the voucher is a housing choice voucher, so we actually send them out with their case manager to any number of landlords. We're working with about 175 right now. And they apply like with anybody else. Our program provides funds for their deposit, their application fee, even utilities at some point. And then we pay most of the rent so that it is very, very affordable. And the model that we use, called Housing First, is designed to eliminate any and all barriers in their way of getting affordable housing. So they can move in very quickly, sometimes as quickly as a week after first meeting a landlord. And I think it's important to say that the landlords, while not represented at this table today, are a key player in our efforts to eliminate homelessness right now in Albuquerque. That without companies like TNC Management, for instance, we use a number of their apartments, that we wouldn't really be able to do what we're doing. But they have opened up their doors, and they understand that our tenants need a lot of services, and housing is first. You know, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, housing is at the bottom of that pyramid. And once that piece of the puzzle has been satisfied, then our clients can work on a lot of other issues, their health, of course, nutrition, education, looking for a job. And when that works, and it does work quite well, then our clients become extremely successful. They're reintegrated into the community, and hopefully their children are back in school, and their health just improves immensely.
And Dennis, okay, so sounds like some things are working. What needs to happen next, specifically in Albuquerque, to address homelessness?
And you guys can chime in. There are a number of very specific things. One, which is we need affordable housing. We need access to affordable housing. That's always the critical piece in this. And we need to continue to keep realigning and aligning even better our resources that we do have. They are limited resources, but when they're aligned for the same outcome, then we all succeed at a much higher rate. So I think that those two pieces for me are critical, that we need a housing supply that's accessible, and we need the resources to go to those very targeted populations all across our agencies, not within our individual siloed operations.
Jennifer?
I would agree. I think we continue to use the resources that we have in an aligned way that we know has impact and makes real change, and that we both broaden the pool of people that we're targeting in that, because we have left out a focus on families and children and youth and some other populations, and that we also add resources to that, and that's federal, state, city, county, and private. We know what works, and instead of throwing money, dimes, pennies out in different places, I think if we consolidate that, add more to it, we can have a higher impact, and then also to continue to look at how we prevent homelessness and keep people housed and healthy with a high quality of life.
And it's tricky because there's a cross-sector savings. It's difficult to translate the saving and reduced jail time to housing dollars. And so we really need to have, I think, at a high level, the conversation in our community of where are we seeing the savings and how do we translate that into housing and support for people experiencing homelessness.
And realize that it's not a pot of money that we save that sits somewhere for
Right.
people to write a check. It's really a shift in using community resources in a better way for all.
John, your final thoughts?
Yes, well, there are new collaborations with the city and the county regarding people that are in MDC and getting them out, people that have been there waiting for housing. I think that's an important next step. I think the other key player in the city is UNM and UNM Health Services, and again, how to bring them on board so that in the housing arena, really, not just medical care, but also housing, so that we can make that translation from the cost savings in the hospitals to housing.
And we do know that there is some legislation up in Santa Fe. We cover the legislature quite a bit here on In Focus, and we will be looking at that legislation to expand the model from Heading Home to other cities around New Mexico, looking at this issue a little more broadly. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.